First one is a real simple one. It has to do with contracts that we've seen on, and I'll send this out with it, but it's in the use of the verbiage for honor before.
Yeah.
And I've used it. I think every broker around has used it. And but in the class that we took with Annie Fitzsimmons on the role and responsibility of acting as a lawyer, she hit it pretty heavy that it's something that there's an inherent risk to. So I just wanted to point this out. I'll send this out with the minutes. Brokers are practicing law even when they complete blanks and on statewide forms. In doing that, we're held to the standard of care of a lawyer. And adding or sooner or honor before in the date for contract completion falls below the standard of care of a lawyer. So we're outside our bounds. That language adds nothing of value to the contract. However, it does add confusion, which we're not supposed to. The party to the contract who reads the language is likely to believe that they have a unilateral right to close prior to the closing date based on those words. That is wrong. The party's confusion is created only by the poor drafting of the broker who prepared the PSA. The broker is wise to continue to refuse inclusion of those words in description of the closing date. The broker is held to the standard care of a lawyer with respect to drafting the purchase and sale agreement, and a broker adheres to those standards by refusing inclusion of those words on Form 21 and subsequently Form 22Y.
So basically they're saying put a date in, and if it changes, go to 22.
If you want to change the date, then change it again.
Yeah, Desiree and we were talking about this yesterday, that yeah, it's more often than not, yeah, both parties are amenable to it, but you never know if something comes up and movers that the sellers thought they had lined up are not actually lined up. They're going to need the full week between now and closing. And if the buyers are hot to trot to move in and say, well, we agreed to on or before.
And so we want to move it up, and then the seller says, no, we don't want to. And now you have a conflict between the two of them.
Yeah.
You go to the contractor, so who has control, and there's confusion. It's ambiguous, and all of a sudden you have somebody's going to talk to a lawyer. All the times I've seen this done, usually everybody's happy and it works out just fine. But it falls short of us being in the capacity of an attorney. We're outside our bounds when we do that. We have to be careful when that happens, because you're putting the designated broker at risk as well as yourself. And that also steps on whether professional liability insurance will cover it.
And it only takes one.
And then you're out on your own if you don't have.
It also for your escrow officer, because they have all their contracts by date and they have their checklist.
Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
Who?
And transaction coordinators and all that.
Yes, I mean, it just really is when I see it, I just cringe. But now that you're gonna send that out, I'm gonna be more firm on that.
No, I know the Christmas tree is in the way of the screen for some of our viewers, so I'm trying to do this.
Here in the office.
Does that work okay?
Uh-huh.
Can you see it?
I've seen that form.
Today's guest presenter is JR.
Yay.
He's had his hands on this form and looked it over for me. Let's see. Okay. This form is made up, and I'm going to distribute it. For me, it's a tool for brokers. I think one of the key duties for us is, and when a situation develops during mutual to closing, there are different notices that are contract requirements that we give depending on what forms we have in our purchase and sale agreement. And in doing that, there's times when we need to give notice for certain things that occur. Sometimes that notice is termination. Sometimes it's waiving and accepting. Sometimes it's putting on notice for something else that needs to be done. But finding the right form, I found pretty confusing. When I go to Northwest MLS and I start searching in their database for forms, it's kind of like hunting and pecking, trying to find out, is there a form for this or not? Sometimes there is not a form for it, and that's where Form 90 is a blank, and that's time to use that one to fill in. Feasibility, for example, 35F, 90 works very well for, because if you use the form that they have, it does two things. You either can accept or you can reject. But it doesn't say if you want to do some things to continue on and putting the seller on notice that you'd like to have some information or have a situation addressed. You have to use a Form 90 in that situation. So what I did is with JR's help here, because he's my proofer. I went through and in this particular column is for forms is in numerical order. And these are the forms. This is the major topic. This is the title on the form. This is the reference form. In other words, what contract document is it used for? And then if there's a special situation, we have the manual, which has the instructions. Not all of them have instructions. And then if there's any comment on it, Form CCB 26C. So as you come down through here, for example, 2280N, it's for down payment. It's a notice of increased down payment addendum. You use that when you're using a Form 21 for residential, 25 for land, or 28 for condo. That's the form that would that be applied to. There is a manual for ADN you can read to so you can use that form correctly if you have a question on it.
And you use this if the appraisal comes in low and it triggers that original 2280.
Sure, you can go back to your forms on where your appraisal is. You can come back here for 2080N. Now, this is the first time that we're put the form together and distributing it. JR's looked at it and we've gone through it and scratched our heads. I'm really sending this out looking for some input from all of us to try and improve it, because it's a good handy tool. It's something that when you're in a situation, you can go somewhere real quick to see if there's a notice form that needs to apply to the situation you have, depending on what forms you have in your contract. I don't know that I have all of these captured. There might be some missing. But the thing that surprised me is if you look at here, I'm on line 3. If you look at how many situations, depending on you have inspection, backup, contingency, rescissions, earnest money. As I come down through here, this one here, 90J is a form that used to exist. 22AN replaced it. So it no longer exists. So we wanted to put that in there as a note.
Hey, Tom, would putting 50 and 51 in there be helpful to people? Because they still get confused in when to use those
Oh,
forms.
this rescission versus release of earnest money.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
What? Oh,
Oh, it's the wheel of death.
Oh, I never should have done that. I am having computer difficulties and this might blow up. So in this form, while I'm waiting for my crash to happen, I might have one. I have another tab down here. I've sorted this in 2 different ways, because if I'm going to go look for something, I want to look for it maybe for where the form is for what the title is. But I also sorted by topic, so they grouped them all together in alphabetical order. So if you're looking for something that is financing or, oh darn. Oh, it cleared up. I'm not touching that again. So
they asked if Form 50 and 51 was in here.
Or if it would be worth putting it in there for people.
oh, we can do that. That's a great idea. Thank you. And then as I come down, I'm looking, see, there's 46 minus 3, so there's 43 different situations and notice forms that are in existence that have been made by Northwest MLS. I had no idea there are that many of those things. So if I come to this tab, and I'll make these into PDF format when they send out, this is sorted in alphabetical order by topic. So appeals, appraisals, backup, closing, contingent sale, down payment, earnest money, financing, HOAs, inspection, insurance, lease, neighborhood. So you have a couple different ways you can go real quick to find out if the form you want to use when you have a situation when you're managing your project. And then I really would like to have any input for either sorting it differently or adding forms that aren't on here, or if you see anything that would help fill in the reference forms. We'd love to have that input, because this is something that if we tighten it up, it's a good tool to have for the future. Any questions from anybody? Okay. Let's save it, definitely. There we go. All right. So with that, I'm turning it over to Marcia. What's your favorite topic for the day? Want me to drive or what do you want to do?
Yeah, oh, no, that's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead and put up, the reason that I'm doing counter offer is because again, my last 4 counters, they either didn't use it or it was filled out wrong. So I thought it'd be real good just to kind of go over it. And as you know, line 3 and 4, it depends on who is writing it. If you're representing the buyer, then you are on line 4. If you're representing the seller, you're on line 4.
What?
Yeah,
You're all on line 4?
who you represent, you put on line 4. They are the undersigned.
Okay.
So if you're representing the buyer,
So line 3 is the name of the party who will receive the counteroffer.
that's who it goes
And
to.
4 is the name of the party
Sure.
making the counteroffer.
And my analogy, it's like a Valentine's card.
Oh,
2 is who you're sending it to, and from is who you're representing.
Yes.
And then there should be no issues on that. But I thought it was real funny because we briefly mentioned it yesterday or last week, and then I had 4 of them. That was it was like, all right. So
Start telling people.
where it says other, Russ has had Brett
so Brett Sullivan.
Sullivan fill in a verbiage, a small short paragraph that we really need to start using. So if you are representing, if you are the seller and you're filling this out, then the reading should be this counteroffer takes precedent or supersedes any conflict or ambiguity in the original purchase and sale agreement body. That's when you're representing, that should be the first Form 36. And let's say that you agree with, your client agrees with some of the things, but not all things. So as the buyer, you're going to fill out a new Form 36, and you're going to have, when it's from the seller, from the buyer to the seller, everything that I read above in the original purchase and sale agreement body and seller counteroffer. So there is a slight difference there, and it depends on who you represent. And then we'll send this out in the email. And then again, it says how to properly reference if you want to change something. Example, on this counteroffer, go to the top of the form, please. It has a purchase price and other. So on the counteroffer, maybe you want to change like the date. So then you reference Form 21, page 1 of 1, and I believe it's item number 7, closing date. Change to read, and then whatever it is that you want. That way you're not redlining everything. And
Please don't redline.
yes, and so last week, I have had one of my clients say, I'm not going to sign that first page of the PSA. I know you told me the counter takes precedence. And in that instance, just outline the amount and then put C counteroffer or C Form 36. But you don't need to have anybody initial any place. That way, once they sign this, it's done. And it makes it so much easier. Last week I had an offer where they put in, they mark through like 5 or 6 things, and and I count them. They had 3 buyers and 2 sellers, so there were 5. If you can imagine, 5 initials, on 4 or 5 different corrections. And finally, I get to the back of the contract, and it has the FERPTA, and then it has the Form 17, and then it has something else. And that is not a part of the contract. And then the very last page was the counter. And I called them back twice, and I said, I never did see what's the closing date. And so then they said, well, it was the very last page.
The counter should be the first page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we take a look then, the next thing is to review a formal format. If you are submitting an offer, it's your PSA. We highly recommend right after that, before any of the other 22 documents, put the legal right there. And then do all of your addendums. Now, if it is a counteroffer, then the counteroffer goes first, and then that document is underneath it. And then if there's a second counter, that first one is taken out but retained. And then it's replaced, so you only have one counteroffer with your contract.
That's right, that's escrow should only be receiving one counter offer.
Yes,
So to
And you-
eliminate confusion and
yeah,
Yeah.
because then people,
I've
they,
seen people put a big red line through an old counter.
and you can do that, but it just
It's confusing.
it junks it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so now here's a test. Do you have that one about all the documents that are not a part of a contract?
Oh, the deliverables.
Yeah. So what is not a part of our contract?
Form 17.
Form 17 is not. What else?
Law of real estate agencies, yeah.
Yeah, I see that a lot. It's like, and I see it,
Six extra pages.
yeah, and I
Why
see it
did
as,
they even put it in there? You made us put that as requirement.
no, well, we're changing that.
Well,
We're doing an
It's a
executive decision.
deliverable after, yeah, you put and you put it on the 22D, right? The
Yeah.
buyer has read and received
that
and
was the-
initialed the.
That was the whole fight back and
Yeah.
forth and, you know, that's-
And FERPTA is a form that the buyers need to be included with all the contract documents, but not the contract. And then the very first thing that I did, Brian Boyle did this to me. I sent one back and I said, yeah, but your buyers didn't sign that. And the very first line says, where the buyers sign if they are not, oh, I hate that double negative. If they're not, yes. And I go, oh my gosh, all this time I've been having my buyers sign that, so I like to have them initial the top so
Yes.
that it shows that they have received this document. Okay, what else do you think I might see that shouldn't be in the contract? Yeah, and I usually like Windermere and
Because you
Coldwell
don't see those
Banker.
very often.
It's typically, well, it's just an extended version of the Form 17 already has an environmental disclosure in it, but this
Yeah.
is just a souped up version
Yeah.
of it.
I don't really call it out, but yeah, it really is not a part of it. We talked about the FERPAs. I have seen where they put the title report as a part of the contract. And I don't remember who it was, but it was one of our brokers received one that was 97 pages
Oh,
long.
my word.
No, I'm saying the entire contract. And in between all of that stuff. And so I helped her to go back and she sent it through an Athenticine.
Oh,
I hate that.
Well, if it's the one I'm thinking of, there's one in particular that I was involved with where, yeah, it was almost 100 pages. And over half of it was a new build. And the builder had required them to initial every page of this thing that said what finishes they were including.
Mhm.
So that they couldn't go back because they were paranoid, because I guess they'd had it happen to them before. But they did not want the buyer to come back and be like, I want these finishes instead of those, and swap a bunch of things around. They said the price is based on these finishes. And so it was over 50 pages of initials. And they included that in what they wanted to send to escrow. And I was like, escrow has nothing to do with
I
that.
sure could care less.
Those are not instructions for escrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I think it was 90 some pages was the biggest one we've seen.
Yeah.
Since we
massive.
started this.
So as long as they understand that you're talking part of it, when you say part of the contract, what they actually send to escrow, not what they're uploading in command.
Well, yes, that's a good differentiation. Because all those documents, you will get dinged on if you don't
Right,
upload them.
right. They just don't send them to escrow.
So they're
Yeah.
important. That's why we call them deliverables, because you need to deliver them
Mhm.
after the fact.
Yeah,
or
and you know,
separate.
technically, like. 22K is part of your contract, but that's a deliverable. And J is the same way, the lead
I
disclosure.
mean, we try to get it buttoned up all at the same
Yeah.
time, if everybody's done the right thing, but.
Okay, did you
Yeah.
find that one?
I'm looking.
Oh, okay. But anyways, I just wanted to hit that, and then one more topic. Our office on contracts has what's called best practices, and I think for all of you, email wise, I've sent back, this is what is recommended. This will come out in the notes today. So for a selling broker, that's the one that represents the buyers. Those terms are
It took
so.
me forever to get that straight in my head.
Yeah, so if you're representing the buyers, then there are some things that we really recommend, and everybody is so good on this first one, Form 22D, page 2, item 12. The buyers acknowledge that they have received and read the blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly. Those
and
words,
then
exactly.
the second one is if you're going to, the second one is like sellers to provide Form 17 or 17C within 5 days of mutual agreement. So those two are on the Form 22D. Now, we also, best practice, have 22RA, which is attorney review. Why do you think we have that? Attorney review. Why do we put that extra piece of paper in there?
Cover our butts.
Hmm?
Cover our butts.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what
I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it.
it is.
Because
It
if a
is.
client comes back after the fact, there is a clause in the Form 21 that talks about having an attorney review things, but it is buried. And that there's case law that shows that somebody
Yeah.
could say, well, my agent didn't properly
Didn't go
explain
over
this to me.
that with me.
So 22RA is a 1-page document that outlines, I don't think it could get any clearer.
No.
I love that document because it's 1 page and it's super
It
simple.
saves you and the broker and the firm.
And
any
I've seen
litigation.
a lot of people put both sides in there, right? So that's how they explain, if you're a buyer's agent, you're pitching this to a listing agent, you say, this covers both of our clients.
Yeah.
So both of us then have the opportunity to, by default, 5 days, they put it in front of an attorney.
Hmm.
They can do 10 or you can do 1. Whatever it is, it just makes it clear to both parties. You had an opportunity to put this in front of an attorney, you didn't. So if you want to come back after the fact and sue somebody for something, it's gonna be a lot, you're gonna have a lot shakier leg to stand on because you had the opportunity. And it was clear.
Yeah.
One page document with 2 lines. Yeah.
So when I see a really complex or a really, especially owner finance. For sure, I mean, that just makes sense, you know, and because you want to share that form, that whatever the form that the real estate contract is going to be done on. Another one is if it's going to be real fast. Those are always, to me, I don't like a fast close. I like for everybody to have time to be able to go through and nobody's rushed. But a lot of times people will, it's the end of the year and they want to get it in. If it's a cash deal, I think it's important. So anyways, the 22RA protects your client, it protects you, and it protects our brokerage. And if you've seen my little,
And people have been too happy lately this last month. So
it seems like it. So another one that
Nuts.
I'm really surprised that I don't see more on a buyer's side coming from the selling broker is the 22T.
Mm.
Why would you not, 1, include a legal description, or 2, not include that? Because as a limited practice of an attorney, making sure that's a clear title and that they read it and review it and understand it. And the best thing about title is that there are questions you can't easily understand. That is why we have a title person on the team. So whoever your title person is, get to know them on a first name basis. And a residential, a VV. I know that it seems like duh, well, they have to get insurance, but in the 10, 11 years that we've been here, when the fire went through up here, and when actually there was somebody that paid cash for it. And they did get homeowners insurance. And
The other thing that can happen there is, yes, the lender will make them get insurance, and sometimes that insurance is cost prohibitive. If they just didn't know that there
Yeah.
was a floodplain or fire danger or a recent landslide.
or they've done a moratorium.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the lender gives them an insurance binder that's $600 a month or something like that. If they back out based on that, the seller can technically keep the earnest money.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, because if the lender says that they would have pushed the loan through if they bought the insurance binder. So the 22VV gives them an option to get out if they take a look at that insurance binder and it is unacceptable.
And it's good on a checklist for a buyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna buy this home. Okay, I need to make sure I get homeowners insurance. Form 36, we've already
No,
covered.
you're talking about insurance, but VV, but one of the things that was really a surprise to me, because we have this in Chelan, we have so many people have rental houses and they're selling them and people are switching in. But wanting to move in early. Oh, can I have the moving van came? Can I move in early? And can I have the keys? And can I get in? Brokers that let people move in early, you're gonna have a real problem. If something happens, someone slips, falls, hurts their back unloading the truck, runs over something when he's backing it up in the driveway. And you say, well, whose insurance is gonna cover this? Is it still under the seller? Is it still under the buyer? Not only does insurance come into play, but it comes down, it's literally 9 o'clock the day of closing is the time assigned to turn over keys for the contract. And if it's closed and it's closed and you haven't got that from the officer, and then you release the keys, and then that's fine, but you don't have to. And I have some customers that won't work with me again, I'm sure, because I was representing the buyer and I was trying to explain to him the selling broker is not giving you the keys because of the contract and because of the risk. But he had a U-Haul truck and he wanted to unload that thing and he's going to unload it today, that kind of a deal. And he went over to the brokerage and found the listing broker, and he ended up calling me going, who's this guy standing in front of my desk, pounding on my desk about getting the keys?
yeah.
And I was going, I did not send him
I
over.
told him no.
Now, if you're.
They want you to like me,
If
please.
you're an attorney look over, there are ways to do a rent back or
Yeah.
early occupancy.
There's
on
proper ways to
just
do it.
The garage, but you need to put it in place and it needs to require renter's insurance. And that's the thing, are people gonna do that for 2 weeks
No.
worth of early occupancy? If they're coming in 2 months early, that's one thing, but at that
But
point,
insurance and closing turnover keys, it's
you would do an early occupancy and a rent back for the garage only, and they would need to carry some sort of insurance.
sorry, Marcia. interrupted
That's
you.
all right.
That's
no.
that's a good, because that
Yeah.
does come up pretty often, actually.
So the notes I'm gonna send out then have one for land. And the only difference is BV is not on there. So we want you to include those always. And then another thing that I've been trying to remember to do is when you get mutual, there'll be a paragraph up there, and I'll add it to my notes because I forgot it again. There'll be a paragraph that says, congratulations on mutual. Please make sure that you upload all of your documents in command. And then also do your, it's not called a broker commission, but a broker demand.
Commission request.
A commission request, and have that done within 48 hours. That is a new best practice. If I can get that back.
It's
my
actually
mind.
in their contract. They signed that they will upload and do all that within 48 hours. So
Okay,
it's
good.
Yes, that's helpful for a number of reasons. Mainly you get that broker demand over to escrow, they can look it over and make sure that everything lines up. If your commission that you are saying conflicts with what the listing
which
agent
happens
said,
a lot.
yeah, we want to make sure you get paid properly, and having more eyes on it is always a good idea.
Okay. So that's me.
Well, that's it for today.
That's it for today.
From last March through now, for those who've hung in there, is there any comments as far as have we skipped the topic this year that somebody would like to see, or any feedback? I've been making these crazy matrix things. I don't know if they're driving people crazy or whether they're handy and useful.
Actually, think you just brought it up, but the early occupancy and rent back situations for either the buyer side or a seller that's going to continue to occupy, even though the buyer's taken possession. For whatever reason, their home that they're buying is 2 months out, something like that.
That would be.
Covering those types of scenarios would be good, just because there are right ways to do them.
Mhm.
And I think as agents, we all care a lot about people that we serve. Either our clients, or sometimes we get to know the clients on the other side of the deal and we really care about them.
There you go.
And if they're in some sort of situation where, I mean, it would be pretty heartless to just tell them, too bad, so sad, we take possession on closing. Yeah, we take possession on closing day, you need to get out in the snow. You know, we care, but there's a right way to do those things that cover both parties legally and make sure that we as agents are doing we are exercising the proper care as a
Sure.
limited practice attorney.
Mhm.
So yeah, going over situations like that, I do think that those pop up. And I do think that from a admin perspective at the brokerage, our initial reaction is don't do it. It's too much liability. But I think
Yeah.
if there's a right way to do it, and we can train people up on the right way to do it so that they're buttoning things up properly. It'd just be nice to not have to tell people who are in a bind that, you know, we can't risk it, so they need to figure it out.
I have a question for
yeah.
you, Tom Brascher. When you get new listings, you said you were adding that paragraph about when it's pending to upload documents. Can you add something on the listing side too? Reminding them to upload all their listing documents in Command and also to put it in KWLS?
Oh, if they're the listing
If
agent,
they're the
definitely.
listing agent, yeah, because that people are not remembering to do that.
Yep.
And that affects our numbers with the region and stuff, as far as how much money we have, as far as listings. If they don't put it in there, it doesn't show up. And I can't do a broker demand if it's not in there. They won't let me.
And that ties into Northwest MLS and that process. If anybody needs help going over it, it's pretty quick. You really just need the basic details,
Mhm.
a photo, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
And then the MLS number, so
Yeah.
that they'll talk to each other. But
Can't get on my call. Thank you.
yeah.
I have just one question. What
Yeah.
is best practice if, like, I have a listing and my client wants to kind of like cancel it for a couple of months,
Mhm.
just December and January,
Mhm.
and then come back on the market next year on February, March. Is the best just to cancel or,
Mhm.
what
Okay,
is the best way to go about it?
let's do this. Maria, did you hear the question? Okay.
It just repeated.
But the question is, you have an active listing, have a client that would like to cancel it for a month or two and then make it active again.
Uh-huh.
What's the best practice for handling that situation?
Yes.
Marcia?
So you would use your Form 19. And you on the right, and Form 19, always make sure you have the area and the listing number, because it doesn't always auto-populate. That's one thing about that form that drives me nuts. On the right-hand side, it says canceled. And if you can get everybody to sign, so it would be your sellers, Aaron, it would be you, and then also Russ, because technically it is a brokerage listing. If you can get them all on the same day, then show the next day is the day it's canceled, because what will happen is at midnight, it goes to cancel.
So here's Form 19, Marcia.
Yeah. And then on the number 9 down there, where it says canceled, and then you just put the inactive date. You could do it for Friday or, a few days out. But if you wanted to do really quick, you need to make sure you can get everybody's initials. Because on the bottom of the form, you'll see the sellers, yours, and then Russ's. There's room.
Can I ask you, what would be in this case, what would you do, or what would you advise your client to do? Take it temporarily off the market or cancel it for 2 months?
You need to do a minimum of, go ahead.
Yeah, so it depends on what their purpose is. If they're temporarily off the market, it's usually for things that are, well, it can't be more than 45 days. So it's for like a death in the family, or the weather makes it impossible to show it or something. So if it's gonna be a quick, like, take it off the market, put it back, that could be a simpler way to do things. And that one I don't think requires a designated broker. So it's just you and your sellers. If you're gonna cancel for more than 60 days, the huge benefit there is that it clears the days on market. So if you go back on market in February and it's been more than 60 days, it shows 0 days on market.
Like a brand new listing.
That's,
Yeah.
and that's the big advantage there. So it shows up on all the hot sheets for Zillow. Temporarily off market will show up on hot sheets too, but it's not weighted as much.
So then, just a little trick, when you start to set up the listing again, you go into your transaction desk and then copy that file. And then put in your new dates and everything.
And it
do
should
you-
carry over photos too, which is nice to not have to put all those back in.
But it will be a new number.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that they would carry over. I guess if Northwest MLS was helping you, they could go back from and take those old pictures and documents, but for an example, if the only disadvantage on that is that if there's a septic and you advise them to pump it, unless they sell it within 12 months of that time, then they have to redo it again.
That's true. Yeah.
But we have so many septic services. That's just one of the unfortunate things. But if you go into the transaction desk and you go to that transaction folder, then up on the upper right hand, there's a place where you can copy it. And then you just give it a new name. In other words, if it's Jones at 123 Main Street, if that's how you do it, then you put Jones and then maybe something that will so that you can see it right
Yeah,
away.
you put the word new in there. Or
Yeah.
something like that.
Anything, you can put anything in there. And then that way, the paperwork comes down, and then once you go through and you're setting up all that information about when the listing is, when it expires and stuff like that, then all that information will auto-populate it. Should make it easier.
Now something you said I want to emphasize on, because I've watched you do this. She mentioned carrying over the photos and stuff. You don't have to do that all over again. Don't hesitate calling Northwest MLS.
Yeah.
Because when you talk to them and do that, they will help do that for you.
Or even just via email. So listing.
They'll help you walk it through and do it. I mean, I don't know how many times I've listened to Marcia call them up and turn around and have them walk that through.
Yeah, it's helpful. But when you get this done, you get the cancel done, send it to listing input at.
And what about the timing on that?
Because you can't do it on.
12 o'clock at night, right?
And
Cancellations have to be done by
Yeah.
the listing department.
One of the things we are going to do different next year is I went back and reviewed everything, because I have spent my career around buyers on the buyer side, is that when we go through this program again, it's going to be balanced where there's going to be more discussion with Marcia on the listing side at the same time. So that way we cover both listing and have more balance with the buy side. And so that's one of the things we're planning on doing.
Okay.
So, if there's nothing else. Let's wrap it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, Marcia. Are we,
And I don't know how things are going, but around the holiday season when things are getting nuts, I don't know if we might want to, I don't know how many more contract classes. I might be doing more wrap up stuff like this rather than spend a lot of time on a big new program.
then we'll kick the new one off in January.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Thanks,
See
Al.
you
Thanks,
later.
Maria. Thanks. Who else is out there?
Aisha.
Aisha. Thanks for hanging in there.
Hi, bye.